process of experimenting with certain campaigns, trying new gimmicks and things to kind of, test out certain ideas for, you know, the world of D&D. And so, one of the ideas that I had 3 people for this, and it was kind of going to be like a social experiment more than anything else. Didn't turn out all that great, but, at the end of the day, it was an idea that I still feel was somewhat worth trying out. It was definitely interesting to go about seeing my my players, work around their situation. And so the concept was really simple. You have 3 heroes of, any race or class that they want. However, the catch was they had to draw from a hat as to their current disability, and there were 3, little pieces of paper that I had written on, folded up and put in a little hat, right? And whatever they got, right? And so it was really simple. One person was going to be blind, one person was going to be deaf, and one person was going to be mute. And that was the setup. So David makes his character, and his is a Dragonborn. A Dragonborn Paladin. And he pulls the blind card, or the slip of paper. It's like, oh shit, for real? Like, hey man, that's what you drew. Like, alright, god damn it. And then there was Jesse and Terry. And Terry made a gnome thief. And he got the mute one. And, of course, Jesse got the disability of being deaf. And hers didn't really affect her as much as it did, like, the Dragonborn or the guy who was mute. Terry. The gnomish rogue character. I don't remember what he called him. But yeah, so the gnome guy who was mute, Terry had decided just to stick him with a piece of chalkboard and chalk, and he would write on a chalkboard that was slung around his neck. And Lucy picked a druid elf character, and she did so that she could have a monkey familiar, like a spider monkey, I believe it was, crawl up on her back and like look behind her and look around her and stuff, and kind of like tap her on the head or something if somebody was coming up from behind her and she couldn't hear him, right? And that was really smart. And I think she also picked the spider monkey because the whole thing was very representative of the 3 monkeys, And that's kind of where I'd got the idea, of course. And she had this thing where she could enhance her monkey too, so that like if she needed to get into a fight, she gave it a knife, which it had a little belt where you could put the knife in too, right? And then she would enhance its size with magic, and then it would just go to town on people, Like, it would go from a spider monkey to something a little larger than a baboon, and it'd whip out this knife and it'd just jump at people's faces and start cutting them up and shit, and it was real fucking mean. I don't remember what she called it, but He didn't want to fuck with that monkey. Anyways, honestly, it didn't go anywhere past a one shot. It didn't go anywhere really as far as the story went because I had done this kind of Shaw Brothers esque thing, where these heroes who all they all wander in from different corners of like the land into this town, and they just one just so happens to be blind, one just so happens to be deaf, one just so happens to be mute, and they meet up. Right? It's like a meeting of fates, and then they get caught up in this um, syndicate mess, mostly because our thief was doing what he did best, and he was actually hired by somebody to steal a vase that uh, from this syndicate member's house that just so happened to have like his girl's ashes in there. The guy was a former member of the household, and he had recently been disgraced and kicked out and not allowed back in, but his girl's remains were still in there, so our thief was contracted to steal the urn, and things went a little south when our elven character comes around the corner just getting into town and sees him slipping in through the window and goes and gets the nearest guard who has been posted up, which of course was our paladin who had been shipped off by his order to assist the local guard in their time of need because they had been somewhat short on manpower recently due to this ongoing struggle with this local syndicate. And she just so happens to get him, and she's introduced to him, realizes that he's blind, and realizes that he's a bit of an oddball. Like, David played him like he would call everybody brother and everybody sister. How can I help thee, sister? And he'd be able to tell by their voice, of course, because, he wasn't just blinded yesterday, he, had time to hone his other senses, you know. Uh, so, yeah, he'd walk around and he'd call everybody brother and everybody sister. It was weird. It made for a colorful type of character. And so, of course, they try and stop this thief, whom they don't get around to, stopping or even fully spotting to make an identification of. But he catches them, and he gets kind of real interested in, what their deal is after he goes and meets up with this guy he stole this vase for, and he gets the vase and he gets the guy's money, but he tells him you're going to have to get out of town because unfortunately I may have been made, I'm not sure, but it caused a huge commotion, and now everybody knows that somebody, especially the syndicate, has in fact stolen something from that household, whatever it may be. Everybody's going to be in a fit, so you might want to get out of Dodge, while you can. And the guy thanks him and pays him and buys him a drink, one last drink for the road, and he leaves. And as our gnome friend is finishing up his drink, of course, the other two party members waltz in, and they order a drink, and our gnome, being curious as to what a dragonborn who is clearly blind and a woman who has some kind of helper monkey tapping her on the shoulder and everything like that, he realizes that after a while of noticing how they interact with one another, that she is in fact deaf, and he becomes interested and decides to join them for a drink. And he writes on his chalkboard, I'm deaf. We have something in common, clearly. Whatever. Let me buy you a drink. Doesn't say, let me buy you a drink with this money I earned by stealing this vase you failed to catch me stealing. And they have no idea as their player characters that he was the original thief. He's pretty much gotten away with it for the most part. And so they get to drinking and talking and communing with each other. And, it would be this thing where, like, the Dragonborn would say something, and then the gnome would write down what he said on the chalkboard and show it to the elf druid girl. And it's just like, wow. And then that was kind of their system. And of course, inevitably, I broke it up by starting some sort of drunken bar fight. A drunk guy had punched a syndicate member because they're everywhere. And of course, they're going to be at the local town tavern. And some drunk guy had gotten into a dispute with one of them and punched him in the face stupidly. And then that caused all the other syndicate members to get up and wreak havoc. And of course, being the paladin that the Dragonborn is, he had to intervene. And everybody got to see him pop off lightning breath for the first time, which was really cool. However, past that, because that was my initial startup to get them noticed in the syndicate's eye, right? And start a whole bunch of trouble. But man, past that, I don't know. There was only so much I could do because the Dragonborn was really pretty much friendly to everybody, even when he was beating the bad guys up. He's like, you should really try to change your ways, brother. And, he's calling everybody brother and sister, and he made friends with everybody wherever he went. And, of course, he knew the guard and stuff because he was stationed there, and he was always hanging around the guard, and the other two were just pretty much along for the ride. So, aside from a couple of scraps here and there around town while trying to figure out the syndicate problem, eventually it didn't go anywhere because the syndicate were like, this Dragonborn has got connections with the local town guard, and not only that, but they've kind of made a name for themselves because of their current predicament and who they are, and they've kind of been noticed in the public eye around this place, and they're like, it would be too much trouble to continue, fighting with these individuals. So, what they end up doing was, they hired this, like, real kick-ass assassin dude, So, of course, I had Shaw Brothers in mind when I was thinking of this guy. A form of Shaw Brothers and mysticism, of course, because it's D&D, right? And they were like, okay, so we'll just hire this one dude. He won't be connected with us or anything like that. And he is like this trained assassin and former, like, monk, right? And he's just gonna wreak all kinds of havoc, This is the kind of guy who's already got a warrant out, for his arrest, and he's known across the land, and he's like, if he's not able to kill these individuals, he will at least be able to cause somewhat of a commotion and send somewhat of a message and hopefully get them to back down, because us waging war with these people on the street is not to our detriment, right? And the gimmick is that he had tattoos, kind of like the guy from Elektra that would come alive and attack everybody. And unfortunately, that made him too powerful, and long story short, they all ended up dead.